My name is Carlton Cartwright. I'm the Executive Director for the Children's Coalition Incorporated, and we're here today interviewing Miss Tinu Pena. Okay, and let's see, today's date is July the 9th, 2015. And Miss Pena, what is the address here?
The address here is 2101 Vista Parkway, West Palm Beach, Florida 33411.
Okay, and when is your birthday?
May 23rd.
Okay, and is there a year?
There is a year. I was born in 1973.
Okay. We're the only two people attending the interview today. And first question is, what war or branch of the service did you serve in? What was your rank when you separated, and when and where did you serve?
Okay, I'm going to answer one at a time.
That's fine.
All right. I was enlisted in the United States Army. I served for 5 years. I joined the Army in 1994 from Sierra Vista, Arizona. My MOS is a 27 Echo, which is a tow missile dragon repairer. What was the other questions?
What did you do before you went into service?
I was actually a college student prior to going into the military, and at that point in time, I had just completed my work study in school, and summer was coming up, and I was looking for a job, a part-time job in particular. And I came upon this ad that said full-time, part-time job, and that's how I went into the recruiter's office and found some information about the service. I was most inclined going into the Air Force. However, they had a waiting list, and at that time, it was critical for me to find a job. So the Army was my next choice, hence going into the Army.
And where were you living at the time?
I was actually living on my own. Prior to living on my own, I was living with my uncle in Arizona, who was actually in the United States Army as well at the time. Leaving his home, I, went out on my own and, was taking care of myself. And one thing led to another. Like I said, I decided to join the Army.
Did you tell me what rank you were when you separated from the Army?
I was actually a sergeant when I separated from the Army.
Okay. And you were E what?
E5.
Okay. What, you went into the service in Arizona?
I did.
Okay.
I was living in Sierra Vista at the time, attending Cochise College.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. What were you majoring in?
I was majoring in liberal arts, looking to transfer to University of Arizona to study architecture.
Okay. And so were you, I suspect you enlisted. Were you drafted?
No, I wasn't drafted. I actually enlisted. Like I said, I was looking for work. I was in fear that I was going to be homeless. Mm-hmm. And the only option I had at the time, being that it was the job opportunities weren't there for a college student. More so in Arizona at the time, I decided to join the military as the only option that I had.
Okay. Well, then you answered some more questions, which is just fine. That's fine. So once you did your paperwork in Arizona in the recruiter's office, where did they send you for basic training?
For basic training, I attended Fort Jackson in South Carolina in December of 1994.
Tell us about it. What was that like?
It was cold. For someone growing up in Lagos, Nigeria, that moved to United States on her own. Transitioning from a hot weather to a cold weather was really drastic for me. It took a lot to be able to overcome that. I did sustain cold weather injury from that. However, it was experience that I guess anyone that's gone through basic training knows you can never forget.
Okay, and tell us about that. You say you were born in Lagos, Nigeria?
Actually, no. I was born in Washington, D.C. My parents at the time were immigrant students. And upon them completing their education, they returned to Nigeria and took their whole family. I'm the second of 3 children. And so all my siblings and myself are Americans. at the age of 19, when a year after I completed high school, I decided to come back to the United States to pursue my university education. And so I asked my dad to just get me a plane ticket and I'll find my way. So he did that with the help of a friend, because my dad was actually a teacher. And I tell you this because teachers all around the world are treated pretty much the same. They're not compensated the way they should be for people that mold leaders of tomorrow. So with that said, my father wasn't a rich man, so I know about hard work. So him handing me that plane ticket with the help of a friend here in the United States, I was able to come back. At the time that I originally came back to the United States, I flew into Ohio. Excuse me, I flew into New York, and from there got on a train to head out to Ohio. I attended University of Toledo for a semester or two before I moved to Arizona to live with my uncle. So that's pretty much how I got to be in Arizona.
Okay, that's a great story. So tell me about your first days in the service. What did it feel like? Tell me about your boot camp experience. You remember your instructors? How did you get through it?
My boot camp experience was a really hard one because out of all the people, all the soldiers in my platoon, I was the only one that never really received a care package. When people were calling home, I couldn't call home because of the time difference. So it was a little bit hard on me emotionally going through it. But I had a couple of friends at the time that were very helpful and supportive, that got me through that. Um, it was just one of those things that you just have to girl up and do what you have to do, which I did. The most impact that I have was from a drill sergeant by the name Villaseñor. He was on me 24/7. I guess he saw in me what I didn't see in myself. That is that I was capable of being a leader, and he made sure that I did what I needed to do in order to succeed at each and every level of the training. So I went in not being able to complete the 2 mile run to, completed it in about 16 minutes by the time I left. I have to say it was the best shape I've ever been in my life. And looking over it, you learn survival skills, skills that help you in your day-to-day life now that you would not necessarily have if you hadn't joined the service.
Okay. What war or what period did you serve during or in?
Well, I served during the Persian Gulf War.
Right.
At that time, when that was taking place, I was already at my first duty station, which was at Fort Campbell in Kentucky.
Yeah.
I was a private E1, I believe, at the time, and the only female in my MOS, and in my own my platoon.
Right.
It was one of those things that they, basic training, I guess, prepared you to emotionally to be able to call home and tell your parents that you are preparing to go to war. At the time, my unit was activated to go to war. We had packed everything that we needed to ship out, and it was, I think, a week prior to leaving, a call came down and they deactivated my unit, and we didn't get to go, and another unit went in instead. But I would say that was that was the hardest call I had to make, especially since it would be about the time that I'll lose my mom.
Did you what?
I lost my mom.
Okay. Was there anything else that you needed to add to that?
No, it's just that
That was an emotional time for you.
yes.
Okay. And how'd you get through that?
God's grace, I guess.
Okay. Something else that I needed to ask you. So where were you stationed at that time?
In Kentucky, Fort Campbell.
Okay.
Soon after that, I came down on orders to go to Schofield Barracks in Hawaii.
Okay.
I ended up serving 3 years there, and in the same MOS, and subsequently was sent to Fort Carson, Colorado, where I became part of the main support for, excuse me,
You okay?
yeah.
Okay.
There I was in charge of my soldiers. I was accountable for over $10 million worth of equipment. I was able to bring our squad up to speed as far as making sure that all our scheduling and maintenance of the testing equipments were done accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
So then again, I was being looked at for warrant officer school. However, at the time I was already married and a mother, so I guess being a mother was taking precedence at the time with me.
Right. At any time, did you go overseas? Did you see any combat?
No, I didn't. Like I said, the only combat that I would have seen would have been when I was enlisted, when I was stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. However, my unit was deactivated and we weren't sent to Iraq War at the time.
Mm-hmm. So where was that last duty station and job?
My last duty station.
In Fort Carson. You were just talking about?
Yes, my last duty station was at Fort Carson, Colorado.
And where'd you go after that?
After serving a year there, I exited the military and moved down here to Florida.
Okay. Well, before we leave the military, tell me. Did you tell me all the places that you traveled while you were in the military?
No, I didn't. For advanced training, individual training, I attended Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. I spent about 6 months there learning about the nitty-gritty of the TOW Dragon missile system in itself, and overall individual training to get you to be able to do your job once you get stationed to your permanent duty station.
Okay.
So I've been to, overall with the military, from South Carolina, I headed to Huntsville, Alabama, from there to Kentucky, from there to Hawaii, and then after that, I ended up in Colorado prior to leaving. So about 5 different areas I was able to travel to.
Okay. Tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences.
That would be in Hawaii when I got the opportunity to fly in a Black Hawk. We had training on the Big Island, so I had the opportunity to get, first of all, to be on the C-130.
Yeah. Hercules.
Yes, we took that. We flew that in, and to come back to Oahu, we took the Black Hawk in. Hawaii, as everyone knows, is a beautiful state. I was able to see some beautiful spots just flying over Hawaii in the Black Hawk.
What was at any time? Okay, well, how was the food throughout the service?
From basic.
Yeah.
It was what you had to eat what you had to eat at the time to survive.
Right.
So not so good. Moving to my first duty station, the food did improve very well. And
it did.
It did. And it also depended mainly on the chow hall and the cooks, if they were good. So we were lucky at my first duty station. We had great cooks. In AIT, the food was awesome.
Okay.
That was like that. They set you up to believe the Army is going to be that way all the time, but no, it wasn't. But AIT.
What is AIT again?
Advanced Individual Training.
Okay.
And that was, like I said, in Huntsville, Alabama, Redstone Arsenal. It was a great experience there. You learned with other military personnel, different branches. We had the Marines there, primarily the Marines. We had them on the on post there with us during training. But anyways, Hawaii was another great one, and again, it depends on which chow hall you go to. That determines what type of food you get.
How many different chow halls were there?
Oh, in Hawaii,
Yeah.
Hawaii was a big post.
Okay.
So you had, I mean, the infantry had their own section, the MPs had their own sections. Each area, there were different battalions there. So you just figure out. Even we were able to go into the Air Force Base to have lunch or a breakfast if you had the time to.
Right.
So you had the opportunity to go to any one of those chow halls to eat. So
Okay.
they did do well in some chow halls to feed the soldiers well.
How were you set for supplies throughout your military service? Did you have all the supplies you needed to do your job?
I did. My unit was actually very good at ensuring that we had what we needed. Actually, I was the medical supply clerk for my unit in Schofield Barracks, 100% all the time with the checks that they did to make sure we were combat ready.
Mm-hmm.
Also, at the time, I was pulled to serve as the sergeant in charge of the orderly room.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I maintained soldiers' record. I had the awards. I processed everything, made sure our unit was top notch, and always did that with a smile.
Okay. So you didn't see any combat. Were there ever any casualties in your units wherever you served?
Yes. Two that comes to mind that I speak of that you don't really hear a lot about in the mainstream.
Right.
And it's emotional for me because those are people that I knew.
Mm-hmm.
One was a friend of mine committed suicide. Bullying is an issue, whether it's done by adults or children.
Right.
Bullying is bullying, and in the military, it's condoned as a rite of passage, so to say. If you don't fit the profile of what a soldier should be, other sergeants, other soldiers tend to take it as you being weak. Hence, they do what they do verbally. This led my friend to commit suicide. The other accident that happened was during training. And safety is always important in anything you do.
Right.
And one of my sergeants, he didn't strap himself into the it was a bulldozer because he was helping to prep the sites for us.
Okay.
The boundary security we were doing, and it tipped over and actually crushed him.
Jeez.
So
sorry about that.
Yeah, so those are the two incidents that really saddened me.
Right.
And there are other instances where, as a soldier, and especially as an African American soldier in the Army, I came to realize the difference in treatment between soldiers of color and soldiers of European descent. I never got an Article 15, nor have I ever behaved poorly during my time in service. However, I found that getting promotions and things like that was kind of difficult unless you actually go through the whole process. And I say getting promotion is sometimes you get those waivers so you can advance. So if it's already been instilled in you, those qualities of, making sure you look sharp all the time, making sure you're on time and things like that, and you see other soldiers that are not up to par, but them getting those waivers, to me, is a disservice to those soldiers that do their hardest, regardless of what race they are. But I saw it prevalent among the Caucasian soldiers getting those waivers to advance in comparison to the African American soldiers. But it is what it is at the time. To speak out would be to put yourself in trouble and go against your chain of command. But I just did my time and exited with an honorably discharged, and the awards that I got by working hard for them.
Speaking of awards, what medals or citations did you earn?
I did receive the ARCOM. I received one.
What is
ARCOM, Army Commendation.
Okay.
Award, and I received 2 Army Achievement Awards.
Mm-hmm.
I also received the Good Conduct Award, and my service stripes. In addition to that, while I was in AIT, I performed very well as the only private on the review board, leadership review board, and was given the key to the city of Huntsville and made an honorary citizen of Alabama.
Okay. How did you stay in touch with your family while you were in the service?
I didn't get to speak a lot with them while I was going through training.
Mm-hmm.
However, once I was stationed on my first duty station, it was a bit easier. At the time, there were no cell phones, so to say, so you had to kind of wait till like the wee hours in the morning to use the telephone in the hallway to make calls. So there were a lot of early morning calls that I had to make to stay in touch with my family.
I heard you mention, there was some racial issues.
Yes.
But besides that, or even inclusive of that, how was your level throughout the service? How was your level of pressure and stress?
Level of pressure and stress. I don't think it would be any different from any soldier that's in the military. But in particular, I dealt with it by dealing with it straight on. I called out what needed to be called out straight to my platoon sergeant, and I expected him to lead and take action and do what needs to be done. 9 times out of 10, that didn't happen because they conform, which is essentially how the military is structured. You don't challenge authority. But I dealt with the stress by focusing on what the end goal was for me. And my end goal was to do a great job as a soldier, as well as get my education, which I did while I was enlisted. At no point in time did I not go to school while serving. And by the time I exited the military, I already had my associate's degree in computer science.
What did you do when you had leave time? And how did you entertain yourself while you were in the service?
I was always a homebody, so I really didn't go home on leave to Nigeria. I wish I did. Maybe that would have helped a lot in me staying connected with home. But I didn't. I stayed, if I had a 30-day leave, most of the time I stayed stateside, or there was a time that I went to England for a month, and to visit some friends.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's see. What did you think of your fellow soldiers, or your officers?
There's always the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Okay. Okay. I understand that.
Yes.
Okay. So where were you when do you recall that where were you when your service days were numbered?
I was in Colorado Springs, and that's where I faced the ugly. So it was one of those tours that when you have a great tour at one location and you then go to a new one and your expectations are very high and you become very disappointed by those in leadership. But overall, that did not stop me. I have to say, for the 1 year that I was there, I was in the field 24/7, which was required by my job anyways. So it didn't make a difference. But the difficult part of it was being a mother and having a young child and coming back from your training after 30 days or more in the field and your child not able to recognize who you are.
Right.
You don't hear a lot of people talk about, children as being part of the military fabric in itself, but they are. And they too sacrifice just like their parents do.
Mm-hmm.
When, you have to wake up and be at PT early in the morning, that means they have to be in daycare. So at the time I had my son Miguel. By 5 o'clock, he was already awake, and he was already at daycare. So you sacrifice not just yourself, but your family when you're in service.
Right.
And it is what it is. He's a well-rounded young man now.
Okay, so you say you were in Colorado when you separated?
Yes.
Okay, so tell us, what did you do the days and weeks afterwards? Did you go back to school? Did you use the GI Bill? And then we'll go back to friends in the service.
Sure. Um, Prior to leaving Colorado Springs, I didn't go to school there. By the time I was, stationed in Colorado, I had already received my associate's degree in computer science.
Oh, okay.
So, being that I was always in the field, there wasn't an opportunity for me to take classes. So I really didn't, go to school while I was in Colorado.
Right.
But I didn't get to ski either, which I really wanted to. So I really didn't get to enjoy Colorado that much.
Okay.
I was always in the field.
Right.
But after leaving and coming to Florida, it was one of those things that happen. You get comfortable to getting a paycheck every month, and then realizing that, oh my God, that's not a reality anymore. So,
wake up call.
Yes, transitioning was a bit difficult because they set you up when you're doing your exiting interview
Right.
from the military. That yes, your skills are can be converted to civilian skills. However, reception by the civilian world is not that great of soldiers getting out of the military. So it was very difficult in the beginning to find a job. I eventually found a job as a customer service rep, and right down the road, Belvedere Road. The company used to be called Puma Corporation, and they were the first company to give me that opportunity to work. And they will be the first company that I would challenge on equal pay.
Mm-hmm.
I did so after finding out that my colleague was making $2 more than I was.
An hour?
And yes.
Uh-huh.
And he did not have his degree. He was actually going to school at the time, and I had a degree, and we were doing the same job, but he was making more. And I challenged my boss by telling her and him, because my immediate supervisor, I spoke with her about it.
Right.
And they were trying to say, he had more experience. And I said, no, I had military experience, that, that should count for something. But most importantly, if we're doing the same job, we should be getting paid equally.
Right.
And I quoted the Equal Pay Act to them. And then they raised my pay. So that was my first victory.
Okay. All right. So that's, by the way, did you make any friends in the service? Did you maintain friendships after the service?
Actually, I did. I made, at each duty station, I there were people that came into my lives, and
Right.
people that touched my life, and people that I touched their life. Basic training, I no longer am in contact with my fellow soldiers that we trained together.
Mm-hmm.
My first duty station, I am actually still connected with about 2 of them on Facebook.
Right.
And then in Hawaii, one of my friends, she lives right here in Cape Coral, so we stay in touch. She's actually my son's godmother. And I have another friend that is in Louisiana that we stay in touch.
Okay.
So I was able to maintain contact with a few of my friends.
Okay, so let's talk about everything after the service now. Did you use your GI Bill?
I did. Initially, when I decided to go back to school, it had always been my dream to be an architect.
Mm.
So I decided to enroll at Palm Beach State College to pursue that. And at the time, I started using the GI Bill.
Right.
It was after having a conversation with an older veteran at the VA hospital that I was told about the vocational rehabilitation program, in which I did subsequently apply for and was awarded that. So my GI Bill was, put on hold because you can't use both at the same time. So I used that to, get my, let me backtrack. I used my GI Bill to get my second associate's degree in architecture.
Right.
And used the vocational rehabilitation to get my bachelor's degree in civil engineering.
Oh, okay.
Yes. But one thing they don't tell you about that is even if you have your vocation, even if you use the vocational rehabilitation program, it does not stop you from being able to use the GI Bill afterwards.
Okay.
That information is not shared. You just automatically assume that because you use that program, you've lost use of the other program, but that's not the case.
Right.
So when I was thinking of going for my master's degree in project management, I found out that yes, I could have used it, but at the time that I called, if I had called a month earlier,
Right.
I would have been able to use my GI Bill, but I called a month too late.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So after the service, you are an architect?
No, after the service, like I said, I got my bachelor's degree in civil engineering, so I am a civil engineer. I'm not licensed, but I do work with a licensed engineer to practice right now.
Practice?
Engineering.
Okay.
Which is, my area is primarily focusing on land development type of projects, and I'm big on sustainable design, and so I look to work with architects that promote sustainable design.
Okay, so besides your engineering work, career, what else are you pursuing now?
Apart from that, I'm actually heavily involved in politics. I'm currently running for Florida House of Representative, which is in District 86, is part of Palm Beach County. It covers about 6 or 7 communities, and you're looking at Green Acres, Haverhill, Loxahatchee, Royal Palm Beach, Wellington, sections of West Palm Beach and Lake Worth, and unincorporated Palm Beach County. So it's quite a large area, but I got involved not just to be an elected official, but just to effect change and bring change to a community that truly needs it. There's a lot of things going on with the environment that we need to be cautious of. There's a lot of things that we need to start to look at for our education at our education system to better prepare our kids coming out of elementary school, going into middle school, and subsequently going to high school. Because at the end of the day, our future, or the future of this state, heavily depends on what type of workforce we can develop. And without a strong education system, we're going to falter.
Okay, all right. So for the interview, is there anything else that you would like to add to the interview that you feel like we may not have covered?
I think we covered a lot. Most importantly, I have to say that people, tend to make comments that, you're Nigerian, but at the end of the day, I'm an American of Nigerian descent, so I'm as apple pie as it gets.
You mean like the president?
Hey. I guess we have something in common.
I mean, well, I don't think he's from Nigeria, but he's
no,
African.
but he's African. Yeah, he's of African descent.
Right?
Yes, definitely. So when people start to kind of marginalize you by trying to make you feel like you don't belong, I tend to try to refer people back to history. We are all immigrants in this country, except for the Native Americans.
Right.
So if you're of European descent, Asian descent, at the end of the day, when you go out of this country, you're seen as an American, and I stand as a proud patriot American.
Good. Okay, well, I would really like to thank you for your service, and thank you so much for this interview. It was great.
Thank you, Carlton.
Absolutely.